Everybody, today we are doing something a little bit different. It's going to be more of a lesson video, and today the concept of the day is sponsored gaps. This I'm giving an importance rating of about a 7.8. It's very important once you're putting it into practice, but without it you kind of don't really know what you're missing out on until you learn it. So it is of very high importance, but it only helps you. Super easy concept. I rated about a 3 out of 10 difficulty wise, and its practicality and appliance is a 10 out of 10. You're going to be applying this at every single moment of the whole live market, at all scenarios, especially in New York AM, right? So what are gaps? When I'm referring to gaps, it's any NWOG, but mainly we're going to be focusing on fair value gaps, right? Okay, so we're going to be combining AMD and power of day, right? What is that? Accumulation, manipulation, distribution. It's how any candle forms. Price is fractal. So every single candle forms the exact same way on every single time frame. However, the higher the time frame, obviously the higher conviction and more reasoning it has behind it, right? So if we go over here, this is a bearish candle, okay? This example is a 4-hour candle. So this candle right here is a 4-hour candle. It looks one candle, right? But if you scale down to a lower time frame, like a 5-minute, a 1-minute time frame, probably a 5 or a 15-minute time frame, you're going to see how the candle actually forms. So every candle has its wick and has its close. This is a bearish black candle or red. But you can see this is where the candle opens, and this is essentially a Judas swing where these fake moves don't really lead anywhere significant. These moves are called Judas swings because we are essentially getting faked out, because these moves are making you think like, okay, oh, we're getting an open low high close, and we're going to close above bullish candle on the high time frame. We're going to catch longs, we're going to catch that distribution, right? But wrong. What differentiates the move is the area of significance that we're manipulating towards. So why would this be useless? Because we have nothing over here. Well, in this hypothetical, right, we don't really see what's behind, but assuming that we already know the whole candle, this is a fake move. And what did we have here? Let's say we had like a very daily high time frame fair value gap, or just an external range high right here. So or an NWOG like today, or like yesterday, like we had an NWOG above, we open, we get a little move down, we go up, we fill that NWOG, we create an SMT, we get that manipulation, and then we distribute lower and close completely bearish. Even though, yeah, we get that little wick. Maybe this is another manipulation, but regardless, we close bearish. Now that you know how a candle forms, we can combine this with gaps. Why? Because since every candle wants to manipulate, you just want to find out where it wants to manipulate towards and then catch that move, catch that distribution, catch that displacement, right? So how can we do that? By combining time. Because if every single candle forms like this, and the higher the time frame, the higher the conviction and overall reasoning, it makes it way easier to predict, right? So in this scenario, a fair value gap is made off of 3 candles, right? These are both bearish examples, but it's obviously the same thing but flipped. Now, this is the 5-minute time frame, this is the 4-hour time frame, okay? So in this 5-minute time frame, we create one candle at 9:45, one candle at 9:50, one candle at 9:55, right? The 9:45 candle is the highest time frame because 50 minutes. But we create the full gap gets created. Okay, so at 9:55 exactly it hits, and this new candle, this 10 a.m. candle is forming, right? 10 a.m. I'm giving a drastic example just so you can understand, but then we'll get into actual chart examples like today's and yesterday's where it's very applicable. So We make this gap at exactly the gap completely, not at this one, not at this candle, not at this, and not even at this candle when it's forming. When this candle completely forms and this candle is not forming anymore, the new candle is forming, this gap gets created at exactly 9:55. Okay? Now, where do we manipulate towards? Key levels. What are key levels? Areas of liquidity. It's essentially liquidity. We're manipulating towards liquidity. What is a gap? Liquidity, right? So, while yes, we can go to that internal range and then target an external range, an external target right here, it is not of high significance or quality because there's a high likelihood that at 10 a.m. we get manipulated out. Why? Now, assuming that this is the 4-hour time frame, what gets made at 10 a.m.? This gap. So this is a drastic example, but for example, at 9:55, this gap gets made. This is a non-sponsored gap. Why? The whole definition of sponsored gaps is the gap being completely formed at a high time frame interval. So if this third candle was formed at 9:45, it would be sponsored. It would be sponsored because it was created in a 15-minute interval. That is already high time frame. And with that 15-minute PO3, assuming it's essentially the same example as this 4-hour candle, but it being a 15-minute candle. So if the gap gets made at 9:45, boom, then the new candle opens, then we manipulate towards that gap that we just created off of that 9:45 high time frame PO3, then we could catch that distribution. But in a bad example like this one, where we create this gap at 9:55, we try to catch this short, but then 5 minutes later, we create that 10 a.m. candle, and we weren't paying attention, and this gap was created at that 10 a.m. 4-hour time frame. What are we going to do with that 10 a.m. candle? We're gonna open. We are going to retrace on and hit this key level on this gap that got created at 10 a.m. and we're just gonna get manipulated out. So like here, yes, we could have gone here, and then like we could have maybe not even take the internal low, and then 10 a.m. opens and we just get manipulated out, and then we run to our targets. Why? Because of that macro, that 10 a.m. Because now 10 a.m. opens, and that you're comparing a 4-hour candle narrative to a 5-minute one. And not only that, but when this 4-hour gets made, we are creating a new key level, a high quality key level, an important key level, one that has way more power than a 5-minute one. And not only that, it's unmitigated, and we should manipulate towards it to actually end off bearish. So while your bias might be right, this concept could make your accuracy just way better. Now, let's get into some actual chart examples. So for today, it was actually a pretty decent example of it, because right here at, let's say 9:50, right? We have this 5-minute gap that's about to be made at 9:50, right? And this is already a 5-minute gap. However, if we go to the 15-minute, we can see that one is about to get made at this 10 a.m. macro. So what am I telling myself? If we get an entry, if we get a long setup off of this 5-minute, and it's in equilibrium, it's in a discount, it's good, but it's an unsponsored gap if the gap gets made at 10 a.m. Now, a different situation could also be that we are unable to actually make this gap, and we just wick out this space. So when 10 a.m. opens, we don't have a clear target to manipulate towards, so we can expect 10 a.m. to actually distribute us to our draw. That is what happened yesterday because we already manipulated. 9:30 manipulated and 10 a.m. can just get us to our draw. That is an also a very good way to interpret it if the conditions seem fit, right? However, in this case, the gap gets made at around 9:50, I think. Yes, the gap gets made at 9:50, and we are mitigating it. Now, people might have been wanting to take 30-second, 1 minute longs here because technically it's a continuation long. But with that narrative, you can see how, like, first of all, it's not even a discount. Like, it's a pretty bad long. We can get manipulated out. And the gap also, this 5-minute gap gets made actually it gets made in a good macro. It gets made on that 9:45 PO3. So it is a sponsored gap, but okay, this is a great example too because this gap is a sponsored gap for that 15-minute PO3, but since we're so close to that 10 a.m. macro and we have a clear target, a clear key level to manipulate towards off of that 4-hour, off of the 15-minute, getting made at 10 a.m., it's still like pretty invalid. So I told myself I'll take it on eval, I think, because I saw that it was in the 15-minute, I think, and if it was in discount and all criteria was met, yes, it would have been iffy. And that's why personally I just don't like to trade 5 minutes before 10 a.m. This is because while we may not even have a clear key level or target to manipulate towards for 10 a.m. to manipulate or resweep our stop or hunt our stop loss, sometimes we just resweep or we just manipulate, even if it's not towards a clear key level. Like yesterday we didn't, and that was a very good discretional play. If you actually read price action the way it was meant to, it was a very, very good discretional play. However, mechanically, you can get just randomly reswept by 10 a.m. volatility. But reasoning and narrative is also very important. For example, Ronin took, it took shorts off of 10 a.m. because there was just nowhere to manipulate towards. So 10 a.m. could distribute. And we also had valid 9:30, another high time frame manipulation. So as we go, this is 9:55. We are still in this. Right now, I'd be looking for longs on an eval. And it's 9:58, 9:59, and what happens? Boom! 10 a.m. And what happens? The gap gets made, and we fully mitigate it. And you're like, oh, wait, but we're like wicking it completely. And closing above, that's good. Yes, that's good. Most important part, we are wicking the whole range of that 5-minute gap from earlier and wicking that equilibrium spot. So we hit the discount. We're at a discount of this whole bullish range, and we mitigate the high time frame gap, sponsored gap, off of the high time frame PO3. So this is just narrative wise, this trade is just fucking, I took this right here. It's 1 minute long, super correct. Then at 10:05, I think the gap gets made, and I'm like, oh shit, like I'm gonna go break even on this gap because we shouldn't respect it. And this is when I lost fucking $200 on accident. And this is a break even for sure, but it should have been a 1-to-1. I just didn't. So for some reason I caught one extra micro, sadly, but this should have been a break even. Or maybe here would have fucked you up. 1 minute after the gap gets created is when it cooks you. That's actually so tragic. The gap gets created, we mitigate it, and we respect it. It breaks you out, and then it hits full TP. But not only that, look at this shit. Oh my fucking god. And we go to the draw. Eventually, right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that is the whole lesson. If I left out any blanks, this is my first teaching video. If I left anything out, anything that you guys would want to see more in detail, let me know. What is that noise? Let me know, and yeah.